Good morning, everyone. It is Monday, December the 28th, 2020. It is currently 10:57 a.m. Central Time. I'm here at Victory Baptist Church. In the last episode, I discussed everything that happened at church on December the 27th. We're calling that the Lost Day. And yesterday on December the 27th, yes, I did do some teaching that I'm about to redo now. But if you listen to everything that happened yesterday, you'll know why I'm redoing that teaching. But I'm not here to review everything that happened on December the 27th. No, it's December the 28th. And now I have to move forward. Now, I hate having to redo what I've already done, but you have to redo things when your first attempt went so bad because, well, you were having seizure issues and neurological issues. So here I am, hopefully, now let's hope. Hopefully this redo is better than the original. If the original is better than the redo, and the original happened when I was having neurological and seizure issues occurring, that would be a really bad thing and an embarrassing thing. But here we go. We're just going to jump in, and I hope that you will. Hopefully, you will appreciate this, and hopefully, you will benefit greatly from it, and hopefully, it will be better than yesterday's attempt. All right. So here we go. Whatever happened yesterday, just forget about it. Let's start today anew, and let's hopefully accomplish something very important, and let's hopefully it will benefit you and benefit me spiritually. So are you ready? As you know, we have been working through The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. This is a book that I have chosen because I wanted people in 2020 to take time each day to turn from all of the noise and all of the arguing and all the fighting and all the debating and all the different things happening in our society and focus on something spiritual. And by picking up this classic book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, which has influenced Christians from all different theological backgrounds, would be a great exercise. It would be a good thing to do. And I don't know how many people have taken me up on that challenge. I know some have, and I think some have greatly benefited from taking time each day to read from The Imitation of Christ. And then I've been trying to work through each chapter, offering my own commentary, and hopefully you have benefited great from it. Well, today we come to chapter 19 of book 1 of The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. Now, this is very important. One of the very important things you have to remember as you're reading The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, one of the things you have to remember is that The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis is written obviously from a Catholic perspective because Thomas à Kempis he was a monk in a Catholic monastery, all right? So we have to understand his perspective. Now, yet we could talk about his religious order, and it was different than other monasteries. Yes, I understand that. I'm not here to get into a whole discussion about the group he was a part of and how it differed from others. I understand that there's a difference, so please don't email me. But we have to at least see the Catholicism in what we say. We have and what he wrote, and we have to see it as we're reading the book. When we look at his writing in this book, we have to see the Catholicism there. Or if we don't see it, then we're not being fair in our interpretation, and I think we're missing out on what he's trying to say. And in chapter 19 of book 1, I think this is a very good example, another example of where I believe his Catholicism is evident, even though you may not initially see it. And maybe, I understand that maybe this is not what he intended, but I think we have to at least consider it's a possibility. Obviously, I cannot, call up Thomas à Kempis and go, hey, what did you, in chapter 19 of your book, The Imitation of Christ, what did you mean there? Oh, I meant that. Okay, I was right. I can't verify it. But I believe that the perspective I'm going to offer is very important, and I think we have to at least consider it. I'm not going to be dogmatic that this is what Thomas à Kempis had in mind in this very first sentence of chapter 19 of book 1, but I believe we have to at least consider the possibility. Now, there may be experts out there on Thomas à Kempis, his writings. There may be experts on the different translations of the Imitation of Christ and how this sentence should be, could be better translated in a different way. There's obviously experts out there. And if you obviously happen to stumble upon my poor attempt to really analyze this book, feel free to email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, and correct my analysis. I'll be more than happy to offer a retraction and a correction. I am going to reach out to some people today and ask them if my approach here has been correct. People who I think have a greater understanding of the writings of Thomas à Kempis, and we'll in the next episode we will any feedback I receive we will address. But I'm going to offer this perspective with an acknowledgement that it may not be 100% correct, right? But I still think it's going to be beneficial. So are you ready? Here we go. The Imitation of Christ, Thomas à Kempis, chapter 19 of book 1. All right, here we go. The title, as given in the book that I'm holding, the translation that I'm holding, is Exercises of a Religious Person. Exercises of a Religious Person. And when I first read that title, I was like, okay, Exercises of a Religious Person. This could be, I was starting thinking of the different ways I may approach this. Okay, when I think of the exercises of a religious person, what am I thinking? Am I thinking of spiritual disciplines? Like, I wonder what he means by exercises of a religious person. Is he saying a religious person in the sense of those who are part of a religious order, right? Nuns, monks, etc., those who've joined a religious order? Or is he just saying a religious person in the sense that anyone who believes in God, who's trusted in Christ, anyone who in a sense calls themselves a Christian? Is this addressed to just all Christians or to religious persons who are a part of a religious order within, say the Catholic world and all the different religious orders? How should I approach this? So even right there, exercises of a religious person, even right there, you can see a little bit of like if we see this from a Catholic perspective, even right there, that could be referring to someone who's a part of a religious order, right? And we could go through the different religious orders and to be a part of these orders, there's certain requirements, certain things, and certain ways that they handle things. And in fact, if you look up any monastery, figure out what order that monastery is a part of, and then you can look at how they structure their day, what are the things that they have to do, and you can see this. So is this the exercises he believed that all people of religious orders should follow, or is this for everyone? That's an important question. Now, here's the first line. So chapter 19, Exercises of a Religious Person. You will note in the title of this episode, I did not follow that title. Because once I started reading the chapter itself, I realized, wait a minute, there's something we have to address here. And I think this is possibly what Thomas à Kempis was referring to. Again, I'm going with my own theory here. Here we go. Here's the first line. The life of a good religious person. Now again, religious person. We're going to apply that to all of us who claim to be Christians. We're going to apply that to everyone who claims to be a Christian. We're going to remove it out of its context of just those who are part of a religious order. The life of a good religious person ought to be mighty in all virtues. Now, the word virtues is the word I want you to circle. That's the word I want you to write down, because that's the word that once. So at first, exercises, that's the word that caught my attention. But once I started reading that, I forgot about the word exercises and I started focusing on the word virtues, because I could not help myself that as soon as I read the word virtues, I started thinking the virtues that are discussed in the Roman Catholic Catechism and the Catechism of the Roman Catholic Church. I immediately started thinking, I'll bet you he's referring to those virtues. Now, you'll notice in this translation, he doesn't say the virtues. He just says mighty in all virtues. So there's a possibility that Thomas à Kempis did not have in mind the Catholic teaching on the virtues, but he was just referring to virtues in a general sense. That is the possibility. I'm going to approach this that he's referring to the virtues, And we're going to use this to launch into kind of a mini series over the next few episodes where we look at the Catholic teaching on the virtues. He may not have them in mind, but I think he would have had to have them in mind, at least in part. It would have to have included them. So let's read this again. The life of a good religious person. Now, we'll apply this in both ways. So those in a religious order, speaking to you, those of us, and we're going to broaden the application to all of us who claim to be a Christian, who are trying to follow God. The life of a good religious person ought to be mighty. We should be strong in all virtues. And all virtues. First, let's take the word virtues and just look at virtues in a general way, not the virtues as outlined in the Roman Catholic Catechism. Let's just look at it in a general way. The word virtues, as defined by the dictionary, let me look at it really quick. It is defined this way, all right? Virtue is defined as behavior showing high moral standards. Behavior showing high moral standards. Behavior showing high moral standards. So if I read it that way, the life of a good religious person in a monastery, a nun, doesn't matter, anyone's a part of a religious order, their lives ought to be mighty in all, let me read it that way, in all behavior showing high moral standards. So all those in a religious order, their lives should be mighty and behavior which shows high moral standards. Or we could say it this way, that the religious person ought to be mighty in all high moral standards. There should be a power and a strength in their moral standards, just in general. Now, if we take that from the religious person and apply it to all of us, you as a Christian, I as a Christian, our lives should be powerful in our high moral standards. We should have a power and a strength and a might in our moral standards. There should be a power and a strength in our moral standards. That should stand out. It should be seen. Now, here's where we depart a little bit from Catholicism. My perspective, my theological perspective is, listen, the reason we have to be saved by grace alone, through faith alone, because of Christ alone, is because we will never truly be that mighty and powerful in our moral standards, because we are going to fall time and time again, because we have a sinful nature and we're going to fall and we're going to sin and we're going to fall. And that's why our salvation cannot be based on what we do, but what on Christ did. Because in Christ, I do have a mighty high moral standard. I have the perfection of Jesus Christ and his righteousness imputed and accredited to my account. All right. But even though I believe I'm saved by grace alone, through faith alone, and my salvation is not based on what I do, I should strive to demonstrate a high moral standard in my daily life. However, here's where I really want you to start thinking. Here's where I'm going to pivot. All right. Here's where I'm going to pivot from the idea of virtues just in a general sense. And this is where I'm going to try to take this idea towards the virtues as outlined in the Catholic Catechism. And here's the reason why I think this is so necessary. Now listen to me carefully. Many of us, I will not speak for those in the Catholic Church, but many in the Protestant world, when we hear mighty and moral standards, mighty and high moral standards, our understanding of moral standards tends to go, and this is just the reality of it, we tend to reduce moral standards to certain external behaviors, right? In other words, okay, I don't get drunk. I don't do drugs. I don't get an abortion. I'm not a homosexual. I don't look at pornography. I'm not and it's all of these very, very external things on our supposed list of high moral standards. And we sometimes, and I think we have to be honest with this, we sometimes focus on high moral standards that, like, if I'm a religious person, if I'm a Christian, my life should demonstrate a might and a strength in my moral standards. Sometimes we reduce that might and moral standards to, listen to me, to simply external actions. In a sense, we clean the outside of the cup really well, but inside the cup, there's all kinds of corruption. We clean the outside of the really well, but inside the tomb, it's full of dead bones. It's full of it's a decaying dead body. Now, I don't believe that we should ignore the external. I'm not believing, but I just believe sometimes when we talk of moral standards, we talk of virtues, we have such a limited understanding of virtues that we forget other things. Like, for example, sometimes within the Christian world, the idea of a moral standard of being moral in our love for other people and our compassion for other people and our showing mercy to other people, those get overshadowed with don't drink, don't, I know this. I know this is kind of cliche, but don't drink, don't chew, and don't run with the girls that do. Okay, that's a kind of a Texas kind of idea. But the idea is, hey, when you are raised in the Christianity in the Protestant world, and you're a teenager and you've gone through youth group, you kind of learn, don't listen to rock and roll, don't get drunk, don't have sex. There you go. And you're like, well, the moral standards of a Christian has to go beyond just not drinking and doing drugs and having sex. It has to go beyond just the fight against pornography. It has to go standing against homosexuality. There's got to be something deeper to our morality. Our morality cannot stop with just sexuality. Our morality cannot just stop with some of our external behavior. And I believe that when he says being mighty in all virtues, I think he's going beyond I think we stop morality too short. I think we reduce morality. I hate to say it. I think sometimes morality gets kind of reduced to just it's based off our upbringing and our culture. In our culture, we don't do that, and you just don't do it. And it's immoral, but there's got to be more to it, right? There's got to be more to morality than just these very, don't dance, don't listen to rock and roll, don't, back when I was a kid, don't, because it was a big deal. I know this is crazy and it dates me, but in the 80s, going to a small school in the middle of nowhere, Texas, one of the big controversies was long hair. Oh, you cannot grow your hair long. They literally brought us into the cafeteria. The boys took water, put it on the back, at the very end of your hair, made it wet, and then pulled it down. And if it touched your collar, you were expelled. You could not have hair that touched your collar. That's and like that. And if you had long hair, then you were somehow a rebel, and and it's like, what is going on? And that's sometimes that kind of real world, that really weird world of Christian morality. And I think that when we read this, hey, be mighty in all virtues, I think in some Protestant minds, I'm not going to say all, but in many, immediately their idea of virtue and morality, I think is somehow, it's flawed. I don't think it's complete. I don't think I think it ignores, put it this way, I believe it ignores certain aspects of what Christian morality should entail. Christian morality has to entail more than I think it does. And I think we then demonstrate a lack of that Christian morality when we face certain social issues, when we demonstrate no love for an enemy, doesn't Christian morality involve loving your enemy, turning the other cheek, resisting not evil, loving your neighbor as yourself, placing others before you, doing nothing through strife and vainglory? Is that not a part of Christian morality? Is humility, humble yourself, do not, abase yourself, humble yourself. Is that not part of Christian morality? How about the idea of justice? Is that not a part of Christian morality or not? Sometimes when you start talking about some of these issues, sadly, with some parts of the Protestant world, that's almost viewed as that's that liberal agenda. Here in the conservative world, what we worry about is don't be gay. That's our morality. And it's like, I think sometimes our understanding of virtue is just messed up. So I'm going to allow Thomas à Kempis, from my perspective, when he says mighty in all virtues, that he has to at least have in mind the virtues as outlined in the Catholic Catechism. Now, I would have to figure out from a historical perspective, when did I believe the Catholic teaching on these virtues definitely go way before Thomas à Kempis's writing. I can almost guarantee that. I want to say the name of the Pope, but I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to possibly be historically inaccurate. So I can almost guarantee the teachings on virtue in the Catholic Church predates Thomas à Kempis's writing this sentence, and that he's writing to ultimately, I think this is ultimately maybe being written for those a part of a religious order. So Catholics a part of a religious order, when they heard virtue, they would have understood it relating to the virtues as outlined by the Catholic Church. That's why I'm thinking that this is a possible way to interpret this. So what we're going to do, especially for all of us who are Protestant, and our understanding of virtue and morality may sometimes be a little flawed, let's at least expose ourselves to the Catholic teaching about the virtues and see if there's something here that we can grab onto from a biblical perspective. We obviously reject the magisterial authority. I'm not saying that obviously we're not arguing that Catholicism is true, or, well, I wouldn't be a Baptist, right? But I want to see what they have to say in regards to this subject, because I think it could be very challenging for us. All right, so let's look at this. So let me read again. Let me read this again. Chapter 19, The Imitation of Christ. Exercises of a religious person. That's the title that he gives. I ignore the exercises of a religious person at this point because I'm focused on this very first sentence. All right, here we go. The life of a good religious person ought to be mighty in all virtues. Mighty in all virtues. Now he goes on to say, let me read this, that he may inwardly be such as outwardly he seems to men. Now immediately that tells me he has a deeper view of morality than maybe some people would read this. Hey, be mighty in all virtues. And why? That the religious person may inwardly be such as outwardly he seems to men. So we need to be mighty in virtue so that inwardly, we be such as outwardly he seems to men. So in other words, especially those in a religious order, they may outwardly appear to be so virtuous and religious. I mean, they gave up everything to be a part of a religious order. They're in a monastery, whatever. They wear that robe and they look all godly. But what he's saying is we need to have virtue, be mighty in virtue, so that inwardly, the inward matches what we try to appear to be outwardly. In other words, we have to spend, the virtue he's referring to is there to try to clean up the inside of the cup. Try to remove the bones from inside the tomb. For the inside of the tomb to look like the headstone. That from the outside of the tomb. We clean the outside of the tomb, but inside there's bones. We clean the outside of the cup, but inside the cup it's disgusting. He's saying that the virtue that we need to be mighty in tries to fix the inward so it matches the outward. So that means, according to Thomas à Kempis, he is clearly implying that we can have an outward virtue that does not truly reflect the inward virtue. This takes that our morality must first begin from the inside and move to the outside because we want the two to match. Now, doesn't mean we ignore the outside. Just means that these virtues seem to go deeper than that. And I think this is why, I'm going to argue that that's a possible proof that he's going with the Catholic understanding of the virtues. So let's just jump in, all right? Let's just jump in, right? There's so much we could say here just getting this all started. So let me read this whole thing again from chapter 19. The life of a good religious person ought to be mighty in all virtues, that he may inwardly be such as outwardly he seems to men. All right, now, I'm going to put this down. That's the Imitation of Christ. I'm setting it down, and now I'm reaching over, and I'm grabbing the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Catechism of the Catholic Church. And I'm on page 443, or you can look up paragraph 1803 if you're using an online copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Paragraph 1803. I've got the physical copy. Right, here we go. Article 7, the virtues. Now, there we go. The virtues. That's what I'm using for a title for this. The virtues. Here we go. 1803. This is how it reads. Paragraph 1803. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. All right? So this is an interesting way to start. Now, if you don't know what he's quoting there, or what's being quoted there in the Catechism, I was going to say this is not Thomas à Kempis, this is the Catholic Catechism. What the Catechism is quoting here is Philippians 4:8. I'm going to read it again. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Now, it's just interesting. That's the verse quoted as we get ready to discuss the virtues. So the virtues that we're getting ready to discuss, it's almost being implied that the virtues that we're getting ready to discuss are true, they're honorable, they're just, they're pure, they're lovely, and they're gracious. And these are the virtues we need to think about. These are the virtues we need to meditate on. These are the virtues we need to be manifest in our life. And we need to be mighty and strong in these virtues. All right? Let's see what these virtues are. All right? Now, first, they're going to define what a virtue is. So let me read that again. Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Philippians 4:8. Now they're going to give a definition of a virtue. So this definition is a little bit different than what we read in the English dictionary. Here we go. A virtue is an habitual and firm disposition to do the good. So they say that a virtue is an habitual and firm disposition to do the good. So a virtue is an inward. See, now focus, and remember, that's exactly what Thomas à Kempis referred to here, is that we got to get the inward right? Well, a virtue is a habitual and firm disposition to do the good. It's an inward disposition, a firm, habitual disposition inside of us to do the good. Now, exactly what good is he referring to? Well, let's continue. A virtue allows a person to not only perform good acts, but to give the best of himself. The virtuous person tends towards the good with all his sensory and spiritual powers. He pursues the good and chooses it in concrete actions. So the virtuous person not only desires to do good, but tries to do good in a concrete way. It's not vague. It's just some concept out there. The virtuous person has this desire to do good, and they're going to do good in a concrete way. Now, again, let me remind you, from my perspective, no matter how virtuous we are, no matter how much good we desire to do, we'll end up doing the things we don't want to do, and the things we don't want to do, those are the things we're going to end up doing because we are sinners. We're going to fall short of this. So this pursuit of virtue is not how we are saved. We're not saved by our pursuit of virtue and our ability to accomplish it. We're sinners. We're always going to fall short. But we should strive to be mighty in these virtues. Strive. Now, what virtues are they referring to? They go on to say one more thing. The goal of the virtuous life is to become like God. You want to become like God, or we want to become, we'll sometimes refer to it in the Protestant world, Christ-likeness. We want to be like Christ. Now, to be like Christ doesn't mean to be like your view of morality, what you think morality should look like, what you think people should do, because you have all your opinions about actions and attitudes and music and shows and dress, and you've got a million attitudes, and some of your attitudes about things sometimes either reflects more your age than it does Bible, reflects the where you were raised and how you were raised more than the Bible. You've got to set all of that aside. The virtuous person is striving to be like God, right? So this idea of virtue, this idea of morality, I'm going to argue, Now, Thomas Kempis may argue the church can guide you in virtue. I will say it has to derive from Scripture. All right? And this kind of goes along with our series that we're doing on separation. Right? Now, here we go. Next, the human virtues. Here are the virtues that Thomas Kempis wants us to really think about. Here we go. Human virtues are firm attitudes, stable dispositions, habitual perfections of intellect and will that govern our actions, order our passions, guide our conduct according to reason and faith. So the human virtues are and let me read this again. Human virtues, this is paragraph 1804 in the Catholic Catechism. Human virtues are firm attitudes, stable dispositions, habitual perfections of intellect and will that govern our actions, order our passions, guide our conduct according to reason and faith. Now, again, I want you to see this. These virtues, these human virtues, they come from inside of us. Because look at what they do. These human virtues are firm attitudes, stable dispositions, habitual perfections of intellect and will that governs our actions, order our passions, guide our conduct according to reasons and faith. These virtues are something inside of us. That's why Thomas à Kempis says, hey, we need to be mighty in virtue so that the inward will match the outward. If we don't have the right inward virtue, then the inward will not match the outward, and then ultimately the outward will ultimately fall apart and be exposed for what it really is. I think we can all agree with that. He continues, or they continue, the Catholic Catechism continues. They make possible ease, self-mastery, and joy in leading a morally good life. The virtuous man is he who freely practices the good. Now, again, it almost downplays the reality of the human depravity and sinful nature a little bit. We could get into a whole discussion there. So when we read this again, these virtues, they make possible ease, self-mastery, and joy in leading a morally good life. What's going to give you joy in leading a morally good life? Because your actions, when you're trying to live that morally life outwardly, is matching the inward. If you're just doing the outward, just to do it for whatever reason, conformity, rules, parents say so, church tells you to, you're not going to ultimately have joy. But if the outward is flowing from an inward virtue, then there's going to be joy in doing that. But if the inward is missing, then you're just going to become bitter and frustrated, and you're going to hate it. The moral virtues are acquired by human effort. Now hear that. They believe the moral virtues are acquired by human effort. Now we could have a theological discussion and debate here. Now I will say human effort has, well, put it this way. I do not believe in a monergistic sanctification. I believe in a synergistic sanctification. I play a part in my sanctification. And so therefore, the moral virtues, if I can speak correctly, the moral virtues require some human effort in obtaining them and developing them. They are the fruit and seed of morally good acts. They dispose all the powers of the human being for communion with divine love. Now, I believe ultimately the virtues are part of the fruit of the Spirit. I'm going to argue that that's part of it. So, but we have to, I think we're involved in developing them, strengthening them, and pursuing them. I think there's a mixture there going on. All right. Now, here are the cardinal virtues. Here are the cardinal virtues. And I want you to really think about these virtues because, again, we see morality, I think, in a certain way. And I want you to see that these are the cardinal virtues according to the Roman Catholic Church. Right, here we go. The cardinal virtues, paragraph 1805. 4 virtues, 4 of them, play a pivotal role and accordingly are called cardinal. All right, so there are 4 virtues that play a pivotal role. 4 virtues that are referred to as being cardinal because they're so important. They're pivotal. And I want you to really, really think about them. All right, here we go. 4 virtues play a pivotal role and accordingly are called cardinal. All the others are grouped around them. They are, here are the 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. I want you to write those down. Prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. I want you to write them down and place them on your refrigerator. Place them on your mirror. Place them, there in your car on the rear view mirror. Well, don't cover up the rear view mirror. Put them somewhere in your car where you see them over and over and over. Here are the 4 cardinal virtues, and I really want you to think about this. Are these virtues, are they pivotal and cardinal in your life? Are they, when you think about your Christian life, how many sermons, and I'm speaking to this from the Protestant world, from the non-Catholic world, how many sermons have you heard on prudence? How many sermons have you heard on justice? How many sermons have you heard on fortitude? How many sermons have you heard on temperance? These are the cardinal things. Sometimes I think in the non-Catholic world, we would say, what are the 4 cardinal virtues? Well, don't get drunk, don't listen to secular music, don't be a homosexual. And it's like, wait a minute. There's got to be something deeper. These go to something deep inside of us. Prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. They go on, the Catechism goes on to say, if anyone loves righteousness, wisdom's labors are virtues, for she teaches temperance, prudence, justice, and courage. All right? And that's from an apocryphal reference. That's an apocryphal reference right there. If anyone loves righteousness, wisdom's labors are virtues, for she teaches temperance, prudence, justice, and courage. All right? So they make an argument that wisdom labors are virtues, and that wisdom teaches temperance, prudence, justice, and courage. So we could argue that these concepts derive from they quote an apocryphal reference to support this idea. Now, right there could give us reasons to hit the pause button, possibly even to reject them, but let's at least consider them. Are these virtues biblical? Right? Now, they use an apocryphal reference to list them, but we can ask, is the idea of prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, are these biblical virtues that are clearly outlined in Scripture? If so, that we may need then to spend more time trying to develop these virtues. That our morality can be well-rounded and complete, and not an unbalance in our moral understanding and our moral perspective and our moral theology. I had to take a class on moral theology in one of the schools I went to, right? These virtues are praised under other names in many passages of Scripture. They say so even though they give a reference to an apocryphal book, they say these virtues are praised under other names and many passages of Scripture, and we will see if that proves to be true. All right, so let's look at the first one. We're going to look at just the first virtue here, and I want you to really think about this first virtue. The first virtue that the Catholic Church outlines as one of the 4 cardinal, the first one is prudence. Prudence. All right, prudence. Now, we're going to allow the Catechism to give us its understanding of prudence. We could look up the word, but let's look up the word. Let's just stay with the Catechism and see what it has to say. All right, here we go. This is paragraph 1806. Prudence is the virtue that disposes practical reason to discern our true good in every circumstance and to choose the right means of achieving it. The prudent man looks where he is going. Now stop right here. Now, according to them, prudence, the first of the 4 cardinal virtues, is that it disposes practical reason. It gives you practical reason. It gives you the ability to reason in a very practical way. It gives you the ability to discern the true good or our true good in every circumstance and chooses the right means of achieving it. So prudence gives you the right reason to see good, the good that you and I should do, the good that we should pursue. And then, listen, not only the good, this is very important, the right means of achieving it. Because sometimes you can have the right good. Here's the right thing to do. This is the good thing to do, but you achieve it in a wrong way. Not only do you have to figure out the good, you have to achieve the good in the right way. I've talked about this before, but time and time again in movies and television shows, you will see where the character is trying to do the right thing, but you have to question the means and the ways in which they went about accomplishing the right. So does the end justify the means? Christianity would say no. We have to not only try to figure out what is right, but we've got to do it in the right way. And prudence gives you the practical reason to figure out the good and in the right way in achieving that good. Now, that is a virtue we need in 2020, where the church is fighting over not only what is good, but the right way in achieving that good. And there's all kinds of arguing and debating about, no, this is the right thing to do. This is the good way to do it. And this is the way we're going to do it. Well, maybe you're right that what we're trying to do is good, but I don't know if the way you're trying to do it is good. Both have to be right. But prudence is the thing that gives you that practical reason. Maybe we're missing out on prudence. They go on to say, the prudent man looks where he is going. The prudent man looks at where he is going. And this leads us to Proverbs 14:15. Proverbs 14:15. So let me open up Proverbs 14:15 here. Grab my Bible, moving things on the table. Proverbs 14:15. Proverbs 14:15. Right? Proverbs 14:15 reads this way. They only quote part of the verse. Proverbs 14:15, let's look at the whole verse, all right? The simple believe every word, but the prudent man looketh well to his going. So the simple person just believes anything and everything. But the prudent man stops and says, looketh well to his going. Look at where he is going. Looks carefully at where I'm going. Considers it. Prudence, the idea of prudence will make you stop and consider. You just don't believe everything because it gives you practical reason. It forces you to stop and look at where you're going and what you're doing and considering the next step carefully. That's prudence. All right? That's prudence. Let's continue with the... Now, right there, we could stop and start doing a miniature Bible study, and maybe we'll come to that later. But here we go. Prudence is right. Hang on. Let's read this all again. Prudence is the virtue that disposes practical reason to discern our true good in every circumstance and to choose the right means of achieving it. The prudent man looks where he is going. Keep sane and sober for your prayers. All right? Keep sane and sober for your prayers. This is, it looks like they're making a reference to 1 Peter 4:7. Let's look at it. 1 Peter 4:7. What is he talking about here? What are they talking about? I keep saying he. 1 Peter 4:7. 1 Peter 4:7. Let's get to 1 Peter. Here we go. 1 Peter chapter 4, a new Bible, so got to be patient with me. 1 Peter chapter 4, and I know I get emails. Why don't you use an electronic Bible? And you could get there quicker, and it would be quicker and more, and you could shorten your episode. Because I will never want to give up an actual physical copy of the Bible. I like holding it in my hands, touching it, feeling it, smelling it. I like all the senses involved when I'm studying God's Word. All right, here we go. That's fine if you use the digital one. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying I prefer the physical. 1 Peter 4:7. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and watch unto prayer. Be sober, therefore sober and watch unto prayer. Now, I'm going to look up the word sober there. Give me 1 second. I'm going to look up sober. I'm going to go to the Blue Letter Bible app. All right. I'm going to go to sober. Hang on, New Testament. We're going to go to 1 Peter 4, verse 7. Here we go. But the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober. The word sober here is this. Here is the Greek word for sober.
Strong's G 4993, sophroneo. Sophroneo.
Sophroneo. The outline is of biblical usage is to be of sound mind, to be in one's right mind, to exercise self-control, to put a moderate estimate upon oneself, think of oneself soberly. It's used 6 times. Be in right mind, be sober-minded, soberly. It's the idea to be in the right mind, of sound mind. So they use this almost in the idea of prudence, that 1 Peter 4:7 is telling you, but the end of all things is at hand. Be ye therefore sober and the right mind, and watch unto prayer. That that the right mind, the prudence can see, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the practical reason. Here's the good we need to do, and here's what we need to do. And in this particular case, watch and pray. So now let's put this all back together. We're almost out of time. All right. Prudence is the virtue that disposes practical reason to discern our true good in every circumstance and to choose the right means of achieving it. The prudent man looks where he is going. Keep sane and sober for your prayers. Prudence is right reason in action. Prudence is right reason in action, writes St. Thomas Aquinas, following Aristotle. It is not to be confused with timidity or fear, nor with duplicity. It is called the charioteer of the virtues. It guides the other virtues by setting rule and measure. It is prudence that immediately guides the judgment of conscience. The prudent man determines and directs his conduct in accordance with this judgment. With the help of this virtue, we apply moral principles to particular cases without error and overcome doubts about the good to achieve and the evil to avoid. Now, I'm gonna read that one last sentence again. Right? This is very important. Here we go. With the help of prudence, this is the virtue you and I need. We apply moral principles to particular cases without error. Now, there are all kinds of particular cases that we are confronted with every day. Anytime you watch the news, anytime you see a president giving, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, I'm going to put out this bill, this is going to be our policy here. No matter everything you're confronted with, what happens at work, what happens in your family, everything that's going on in the news, prudence gives you the ability to apply moral principles to every particular case. And if you look at how many Christians apply morality to many particular cases, listen, think about it this way. Every Christian tries to apply morality to every particular case. They will say, well, I think it's right to do this. I think it's right to do this. I'll just give you an example. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Over 1 million people are dead. We're fast approaching 360,000 people dead here in the United States of America. There's all kinds of problems, right? And so some of the suggestions by the medical world has been put on a mask, social distance, and reduce large gatherings. Well, this greatly impacts the church. Large gathering, don't have it, shut it down, move it to online, right? So here's a particular case. Now, what prudence should give us then? How do we apply the moral principle to this situation? What aspects of morality should come into play here? Well, I got the morality of trying to obey God. God seems to say, forsake not the assembly. What do I do with that? But at the same time, the Bible says, love my neighbor, love even my enemy. Don't do evil, do good. Put others before myself. Sacrifice my own rights for the good of other people. So now prudence tries to take all of this morality and apply it to the particular case and what's the right thing we should do. If we don't have prudence, listen, the absence of prudence will lead to the inadequate application of the moral principle. The absence of prudence will lead to the inadequate application of the moral principle or moral principles. You can have a moral principle, but without prudence, then you won't have the practical reason to apply it correctly. You may see the good, but then you may even be able to determine the good, but without prudence, you will find the wrong way to accomplish said good. We need prudence. Now, I'm going to read that sentence again. We're almost out of time. So with the help of this virtue, we apply moral principles to particular cases without error. Now we're never going to do it without error. I disagree with the catechism there. There's no way because we're sinful people. We're never going to do it without error. And we overcome doubts about the good to achieve and the evil to avoid. Now, prudence should help us overcome doubts about the good. We should be able to figure out what the good is and the evil to avoid. And we should be able to understand what evil we need to avoid. So prudence seems to be this is as they said, the charioteer of all the other virtues. This is the thing that's going to guide all the other virtues. This is the thing we need prudence. Now, let's do this. I'm going to grab Blue Letter Bible app, and I'm just going to do a search I'm going to put prudent. The word prudent, it occurs 24 times. 24 times. So this is what I think we definitely need to do. If the virtue of prudence is this significant, if we can convince ourselves that what the catechism is saying here is correct, well, one of the ways the way to convince ourselves that it is possibly correct is we got to see everything the Bible has to say in regards to prudence or prudent. And the word prudent is used 24 times in the King James Version. I want you and I challenge you to look it up and go through every verse that talks about being prudent. Now, obviously yesterday, I don't know exactly everything that I said in that episode because a lot happened yesterday. I'm not going to go review everything. But I think one of the things I was going to do is I was going to move that initial teaching over to the church hour and where we're going to look up all the verses for prudent. But I think somewhere between my initial teaching and church, I had a seizure and I forgot what I was even going to do. And so that's led me to going a completely different way. So what we're going to do here in the next episode, we're just going to look at this idea of prudent. We'll look it up. In fact, I got a Bible dictionary here right quick. Let's see if there's even an entry for it. Here's a Bible dictionary. Let me see if there's an entry. Give me 1 second. It'll just take a second. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Prophet. Oops. Went too far. Okay. Prudence. There's an entry for prudence. So we'll look up what the Bible dictionary has to say in regards to prudence. Here's what we'll do. In the next episode, we'll look up what the Bible dictionary has to say in regards to prudence, and we'll look up all the verses that uses the word. And we'll look up the meaning of the Hebrew word. And we'll see what does the Bible say about prudence, because we need a healthy dose of prudence. We need to be prudent people. Especially the way the Catholic Church is explaining this virtue, we need that because we need to be able to apply correctly moral standards to practical cases. But it seems the Catholic Church is teaching the absence of prudence. If we're missing prudence, then we will in an inadequate way and an incorrect way, we will apply moral standards. We cannot appropriately apply moral standards to particular cases without prudence. And you could argue that the Catholic Church has demonstrated over and over and a lack of prudence. They've not demonstrated prudence and applying moral principles to many situations. They'll look at the entire sex abuse scandal that swept across the Catholic Church and all the accusations of children being abused. They didn't handle that situation correctly. They were not even able to see the good, and they definitely weren't even able to figure out the right way to achieve the good. I think we can honestly say that. All right, we'll stop right there. Give me your thoughts on the virtue of prudence, of being prudent. Is it something you've given much thought about? Is it something you've meditated on? Is it something you've tried to develop? Is it something you have studied? Let me know. If you've studied this, we've studied this 100 times at our church. Well, send me the links because I'd like to hear the sermons. But that would be good to know because I don't feel like that this is a subject that's talked a lot about in the Protestant church. Maybe I'm wrong. We need to be prudent people. We need the virtue of prudence. When we think of high moral behavior, when you think of being a moral person, do you start with the virtue of prudence? Or do you think of morality and all these other ways that we've talked about? Something I want your feedback. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great day. God bless.